Let's bring in tonight's panel, Executive Director of the Page Research Centre, Gerard Holland, and commentator Josh Dabelstein. Gerard, let's start with you. What's your reaction to Charlie Kirk's assassination?
Thanks for having me, Freya. I knew when you asked me on that this was going to come up, and I've actually been quite surprised at my own emotional reaction to this. Charlie was 30, like me, 31. He had 2 kids, like I do, a 2-year-old and a baby, and he was killed for engaging in debate, for listening to people, for arguing his case, for believing in things that I believe in, for articulating those things that I believe in. And in the wake of his death, we've seen this incredible outpouring of support, but we've also seen the hate from the extreme left. We've seen the condoning of political violence from Hannah Ferguson. We have seen MP Charlie Kirk liking these posts. We have seen this huge wave of aggression and calls of he deserved it from our own Australian community. And I think what's challenged me is, what does that mean for me and my place in this Australian debate? What does this mean for you, Freya? And I've seen some of the vitriol that you get on some of your comments for standing up for the truth, for defending what you believe in, for choosing not to be cowed or to bend the knee, but to get up and have that fight. I feel angry. I feel sad. I feel devastated for his wife and for his kids. And I feel fired up. And I think you said in your piece earlier that this will create 1,000 Charlie Kirks. And I know I feel more emboldened to speak up, to get more public, that I will not be scared. I will not be terrified. And I've seen thousands upon thousands, millions reaching out across the internet who have made it very clear they will not be intimidated by leftist violence. We will not be intimidated by leftist violence. And if you thought Charlie was bad, you just wait until you have this avalanche of people who care about their families, who care about their communities, who care about their country, who care about their faith, but are going to stand up and be bold and proclaim that in the public square. And I think that's what's called from all of us, is to be brave, to be courageous, to stand side by side, to invest in our families. And yeah, I think that's what Charlie's legacy was, as someone who championed that, who lived the life that he preached. And now it's our turn to do the same.
So true. And it feels like we're at the beginning of some kind of a revival. Just the thousands and thousands of people online that are sharing how their lives have been transformed by Charlie Kirk. Now, Josh, you're further to the left than Gerard or I. What do you make of the reaction we've seen to the assassination, particularly from many people on the left?
I mean, what I make of it is it's mostly an emotional reaction, really. It's intense disappointment. And, you know, you invoked October 7th earlier, and it's emotional thinking about it. But something happened, maybe not on October 7th, maybe it was October 8th, but there's something that happened to those of us on the left who saw a moral fracturing around us that we knew we couldn't put up with. And what's been really disturbing is that I personally don't see anything about this type of reaction that speaks to somebody being left-wing. This is not political. There's nothing political, there's nothing left-wing at all about this kind of... This is a moral problem.
Yeah.
This is a moral problem. And, you know, I think that carrying this identity of being left-wing, I identify as being left-wing, and therefore I can be as angry and as disturbed and as vitriolic and as vile as I want, because I have a moral righteousness guiding me against some type of power structure, whatever it is today. That's not left-wing.
Yeah.
That's just people who are really, really angry. I empathise with people's anger a lot, but I do think it's up to the adults on the room, the adults on the left, to put our feet down and say, This is not how we behave. This is not how we treat each other.
And we should be seeing Anthony Albanese condemning Charlie Kirk for liking that post by Hannah Ferguson, saying violence is justified. But of course, we haven't seen that at all. And I think you pick up on something really important there, Josh, where we've crossed the line from left versus right. It really feels like this is about good versus evil. It shouldn't be political, but not being able to condemn a father and a husband's murder, that is just plain evil. But Gerard, 3 days later, and the left-wing media are still writing articles like this one from The Guardian, questions linger about alleged shooter's motivation for killing Charlie Kirk. I mean, seriously, there were anti-fascist messages on the bullet casings, plus he lived with a transgender roommate. It is documented he had left-wing political views. Why will they not admit that this is an example of radical left-wing terrorism?
Well, why won't they admit it? I mean, you've got, there is a whole machinery behind, PR firms and marketing agencies and influencers, and their entire job is to spin this to make that side the sympathetic side in this. But I think something bigger has happened here, and actually Josh just touched on that then about what are we doing to our moral framework and our fabric as a society. And I think what we've actually seen is this acceleration between polarization between the two extremes. And a lot of that's been driven by online platforms, and a lot of it's been driven on campuses, not even necessarily through the teachers, but through student union groups and self-organising collectives that really do want to see a revolution on our streets. They do hate everything that our country is. They do hate our history. They hate our settlement. And it's not just in our nation, it's in the US, it's in the UK. I agree as well that it's not just about left and right. This is about some quite really radical fringe that has actually captured quite a significant percentage of our population. You see that in the kind of support that Hannah Ferguson has had on her post calling for political violence. You see that in the outburst of support of this horrific killer. And you see this in the way that we're becoming more divided as a society. You're seeing march after march, protest after protest. And it really just feels like the centre can't hold at the moment. And I'm quite nervous and anxious about what this might mean for our future, especially.
Well, picking up on that thought there, Gerard, you talked about march after march. This weekend, we did see march after march from across the political spectrum. What do you think that says about where we are as a country, that you have such polar opposites taking to the streets now all the time, it feels like? Where are we headed?
I think we're heading for something new. There's a phrase that history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. And I think the sort of the post-Second War and post-Cold War settlement of liberal democracy and liberalism and free markets and everyone being bought into that system, I think that's falling away. You're seeing that fall away on the right, particularly in the US with the lurch towards protectionism, kind of neo-mercantilism between the US and China. And you're seeing that on the left with this kind of post-liberal politics that is very much baked into identity. It's very much baked into collectivizing for, culture, ethnic, sexual interests. And I think we are heading to a period now that really is uncharted territory. You add the acceleration of technology in here, algorithmically driven content that does polarize people further, that promotes the extremes, that gets that really outraged kind of emotion in us. And I think this is really dangerous for our state and federal governments and how they handle this, how they use the state, and without taking our freedoms, but make sure they don't tolerate this kind of extremist violence on the fringes.
Well, Gerard, Holland and Josh Dablestein, thank you so much for joining me, guys.